council. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence, and I hope that we would keep Mayor Pro Tem Yvonne Johnson and her family in our thoughts on the passing of her husband, Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The City Council has opened council meetings to the public with limited capacity. Therefore, a limited number of residents will be allowed inside the council chamber and will be rotated for specific items of interest. Following the conclusion of the items or topic of discussion, residents are asked to leave the chamber to allow room for others to enter. All attendees are requested to wear masks. Public speakers are encouraged to register via the JOT form on the city's website and will be allowed to sign up with the courier in the chamber until 6 p.m. Council will use an electronic voting method. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. We do allow and welcome speakers to address council at the public forum meeting. Council respects the right of the public to speak about matters of concern that can be addressed by council. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Zoom participants are requested to mute their microphones until they are called upon to speak. The City of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, bullying. Therefore, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic backgrounds, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. To be considered, written comments must be submitted online through the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov. We have a consent agenda for items G1 through G2, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the August 17th City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we may take a short recess around 7:30. Now is the time for our ceremonial items. Item 1 is a resolution honoring Reverend David V. Fricaro of Faith Action International House. Ms. Abuzuader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas Reverend David V. Fricaro has dedicated the better part of the last 25 plus years to focus on helping others, including those of immigrant and homeless communities. Whereas Reverend David Fricaro sought to enhance both his skills and passions between 1995 and 2009 by obtaining a Bachelor of Fine Arts and Bachelor of Music degrees from the University of Miami, Florida, a Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, New York, and a Master of Arts in Human Rights at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, New York City. Whereas during his educational journeys, Reverend Fricaro extended his outreach by volunteering to serve the United Church of Christ Global Ministries as the Church World Service Program Associate in Nairobi, Kenya, and the Human Rights Officer with the Protestant Church of East Timor, Dili, East Timor. Whereas he also served as the United Nations representative for the United Church of Christ at the United Nations and the United Nations Church Center in New York City. Whereas his servanthood has assisted those on U.S. soil, as Reverend David Fricaro assisted with development of local detention visitation programs across the United States when he worked as the coordinator of Detention Watch Network's National Visitation Program, now known as Freedom for Immigrants, as the president of the International House Resident Council in New York City, as volunteer with No More Deaths, and as alternative spring break leader of University of Miami student delegations to work on poverty issues in San Francisco, Denver, and in our own backyard, rural Appalachia. Whereas Reverend Ficcaro's career began on the stage as a professional actor with the Actors Equity Association in New York City, and spent years in ministry serving as the youth minister at the Union Congregational Church in Montclair, New Jersey, and the First Congregational Church as the solo minister in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Whereas between the years of 2006 and 2011, he continued efforts to work with the international community as the coordinator of Sojourners Program with detained immigrants in New York City, the Young Adult Ecumenical Formation Coordinator for the National Council of Churches USA, and the U.S. Conference for the World Council of Churches, New York City, the Interfaith Youth Core Interfaith and Immigration Specialist in Chicago, Illinois. Whereas David Ficcaro honed in all of this experience, knowledge, and love for the immigrant community over the next decade, as he served as the executive director for Faith Action International House in Greensboro, North Carolina. Whereas Faith Action is a nonprofit organization now celebrating its 25th anniversary that serves and advocates for thousands of new immigrants and refugees from over 100 diverse nations yearly, that educates and connects thousands throughout North Carolina and the United States to cross lines of culture, nationality, and faith, using the motto of turning strangers into neighbors. Whereas during his tenure at Faith Action, Reverend Ficcaro was instrumental in the growth and success of the nonprofit, strengthening life-changing daily services at the downtown Greensboro location by providing assistance with food, housing, healthcare, legal services, emergency financial assistance, detention visitation, back-to-school backpack programs, holiday toy drives, and the Faith Action identification cards to over 25,000 immigrant neighbors from over 100 nations. Whereas with Reverend Ficcaro and Faith Action, this opened the pathway for other communities across the United States to replicate the Faith Action ID program in cities including Hood River, Oregon, Ames, Ohio, Charlottesville, Virginia, Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio, Aiken, South Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, Gainesville and West Palm Beach, Broward and Miami-Dade counties in Florida, and right here within our state, Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, and of course, Greensboro. Whereas under his leadership, Faith Action has provided over 500 acclaimed trainings and presentations on immigration and diversity to health and social services, schools, various cities of Greensboro departments, and faith communities across North Carolina. Whereas Reverend Ficcaro led annual downtown unity walks and festivals, multicultural Thanksgivings, and stranger to neighbor events, he has advocated and assisted also with the co-authoring of the North Carolina driver's license for legislation and hosted press conferences calling for federal immigration reform. Whereas with his excellence of character and leadership, Reverend Ficcaro has been instrumental in the honors and awards received by Faith Action, including the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium Nonprofit of the Year, the launch of the Faith Action ID program, the Greensboro Police Department Chiefs Award, the launch of the Stranger to Neighbor Dialogue Series, and Greensboro TEDx's inaugural speaker, the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro Game Changer Award, and Diamante Non-Latin Persons Most Supportive of the Latino Community Award. the Latino Coalition of Guilford County Community of Coalition honoree, the Guilford Green Foundation Distinguished Service Award, the El Centro Hispanos Gilbertson Clark Visionary Award, the beginning of visitation program to Stewart Detention Center, Georgia, and the first Presbyterian God Talk speaker, the Duke Divinity School Tradition Innovation Award winner, the inaugural Future Fund 10 Audience Award winner, the Rosa Foundation Humanitarian Award, the GHR Open IDEO Bridge Builder Prize Award, and the Lilly Endowment Incorporated Thriving Congregations Grant Award. Whereas countless lives have been impacted by Reverend Fricaro over the course of a decade with the Faith Action International House. He will always be remembered here for years to come for his extraordinary selflessness and his contributions to our community. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Greensboro that the City Council wishes to express a sense of respect and gratitude for the lifetime of investment in the community, state, and globally of Reverend David V. Fricaro for your many years of dedicated public service. And that a copy of this resolution shall be delivered to Reverend David V. Fricaro as a symbol of the gratitude of the people of Greensboro.
We will take a roll call vote. Mary Kay, you gonna move that item?
I will move the item happily.
And I will second it. I am a yes. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Boothwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0.
First, I just want to say, I've been watching you all from a distance. This is a hard job. It takes a lot of character. Way to hang in there and stay on the dance floor together through some tough times. I do want to note that any award I receive or am recognized for is very much in appreciation of and in solidarity with all of the countless colleagues, board members, clients, community partners who have quietly and humbly really been there and stepped up to serve, love, and protect our newest neighbors in some remarkably bold and beautiful ways. An organization can only do so much. It also takes a larger city, law enforcement, health centers, schools, businesses to all really rally around their newest neighbors and to build greater understanding, trust, and cooperation. That happened here, especially through our Stranger to Neighbor and ID card programs, and has made a difference nationwide and even globally. Last thing I want to say is with global warming, we're going to see more and more competition for scarce resources. We're going to see a lot more migration, both within our country and from without it. And people are most likely going to go to the places like Greensboro, who have a strong foundation of doing what's right, doing what's good. It doesn't mean we can't do it better. So thank you all. Stay on the dance floor together. I'm deeply loyal to this community. It's been a hell of a roller coaster ride, but I'm deeply grateful that our paths crossed, and I'll be wishing you deep luck and peace into the future. Please call on me if you ever need me. And thank you. This means a lot, not only to me, but this kind of stuff is going to mean a lot to my son someday. So thank you for that.
Thank you, David. I would be remiss if I didn't also recognize some of the board members I have served with who are in the audience. If you would stand, please. Maria Hamlin, Maria Gonzalez, Catherine Weaver, and Beth Sanders. Great group of people. I served with 6 years. And as you can see, David is an humble, giving man. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I, David, want to say thank you. It has been wonderful working with you over the years. And I like how you said dance floor, because one of the fondest memories I have of you was when raising money for Faith Action. And I believe you did a little singing and dancing. And he is also an amazingly talented man when it comes to performing. But what you do on the ground is really, really special. And those ID cards, won an award. Just so everyone knows, it was a worldwide competition on something that really made a difference to people here within our community. I want to thank you and thank your board for allowing you to move in different spaces and to do things that were different and to set the standard. I'm proud that Greensboro is a welcoming community, and it's because of places like Faith Action that we've been able to do that. So my sincere thank you. I personally am going to miss you, but the city is going to miss you. Thank you. You have left an amazing legacy here in the city of Greensboro, and I want to thank the board for their hard work. And Maria, I remember you did a little dancing on that dance floor too. We will now move on to.
I just want to say thank you to David too. David, I just want to say thank you for everything you did for a trying community. Thank you.
So we will now move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. Our first two speakers are by Zoom. Gerald Austin. Is Mr. Austin on the call?
He is not, Madam Mayor.
Our second speaker is Craig Highfill.
He does not appear to be on either.
I'm sorry.
He does not appear to be on either.
Okay. We have three in-person speakers. James Rosa, followed by Blunt Bedez, and followed by Buddy Rankin. Mr. Rosa?
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Sharon, don't mess with me tonight, okay? I said, don't mess with me tonight. You'll give me. My name is James Rosa. I am the Executive Director and Co-Founder of the Rosa Foundation. Rosa Foundation is happy to announce Youth in Business. This is a partnership with Parks and Recs at Brown Recreation Center on Vandalia. The program will be co-ed program for youth ages 10 to 15. There will be CDC guidelines. This will be an 8-week program starting on August 21st to October 9th. And on October 16th, there will be an award ceremony for the youth. Registration is limited, so please call Brown Rec Center or you can email us at Rosa Foundation for more information. The focus of this program is to teach our youths how to start and maintain their own business. We have assistance from members of the Chamber of Commerce, Heavenly Walker, Wayne Young, Luann Flatners, and others. We are looking for lunch and business attire donations. Again, you can reach us at Rosa Foundation or go to our website, rosa-foundation.com. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe Mr. Bedez is here. Buddy Rankin?
The Good Samaritan versus Greensboro Police Department. I was riding my bike through the neighborhood, Irving Park on Lawndale. Thought it was dog food. Ran over. It was a wallet. I put it in my safety vest. I got home with coffee and a newspaper. The wallet, 3 inches thick, inside credit cards, side of North Carolina driver's license, federal judge. Sensitive materials to get in the courthouse without going through the checkpoint. This guy needs this wallet, so I called City Hall. Identified myself as a good Samaritan. Found the wallet, a federal judge with sensitive material inside. The dispatcher said, I transfer you over to the courthouse. But the call dropped because of the pandemic, no answer. So I said, I called the police department. Identified myself as a good Samaritan. I found a federal judge while on my bike ride. The dispatcher says, we'll have an officer over there in 1 hour. I say, the police drive by here every 30 minutes. The police presence is high. 1 hour later, bam, bam, bam. Police officer, crime scene investigating unit, mobile unit, first officer. You the one with the wallet? I said, yes. What are you doing out there at that time in the morning? Do you always ride your bike out there that time in the morning? How did you get the wallet? I will not answer any further questions without the presence of my attorney, Rufus Ferrer, because these are interrogation questions. You're sending a dangerous message. The Negroes cannot be a good Samaritan. If that's the case, put me in a museum and put a statue up. My white neighbor said he had a situation of the same. GPA told him, thank you. You're a good citizen. The party would be glad to get their possessions back. I find your situation hilarious. The officer continued, this is an incident filed and entered into the database if you want to know more about the case. I have 2 papers. I'll pass down each and sign the bottom of the first page, says thank you, appreciation of a good citizen. And I go back to the urban park and tell my white neighbors I come back as a neighbor. Or the second paper says incident report, where you enter into database, suspect, report case open, and go back to the neighbors and tell my white neighbors I come back as a Negro. Somewhere I read a man going down to Jerusalem, to Jericho, where he was attacked by robbers, stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away and left him for half dead. But a good Samaritan came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds and poured oil and wine. Then he put the man on his donkey and then brought him to an inn. Hey, take care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said. And when I return, I will reimburse you for the expense that you may have. Jesus said, go and do likewise, but not in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. I certainly appreciate you being a good Samaritan and turning in what you found.
So can I ask a question of this person? Did you, you didn't get arrested or anything? Is this being investigated, may I ask? Mr. Assistant City Manager, are you aware?
This is the first I'm hearing, but we can definitely get his information and find out.
Our next speaker is Luis Medina.
How y'all doing? It's been a while. Y'all mind if I keep my mask down when I speak? Okay. I'm going to list some facts. Here are some facts. Both Mayor Nancy Bond and Chief James admitted that what happened to George Floyd was wrong. George Floyd was suffocated to death by the police. 3 years ago, Marcus Smith was hogtied and suffocated to death by the police. The state medical examiner wrote his death as a homicide. 7 out of the 8 officers who killed Marcus Smith have received merit raises. The city attorney, that's you, I believe, Chuck Watts, has claimed that Reverend Nelson Johnson and Reverend Wesley Morris are being pimped, and has also said that Marcus's life was worth less than 6 figures. Chuck Watts is an appointed official. He can be fired, or you can quit. He still retains his position. None of you have said anything about his harmful comments. In fact, for the past 3 years, you have been completely silent. No investigation has been launched. No settlement has been paid, which I imagine you know all that. These are all facts, right? These are just facts. Facts can often be interpreted in multiple ways, but sometimes from the facts emerges the truth. The truth is that the mayor and the chief gave lip service to George Floyd to keep eyes from peering into our own backyard. You all and this entire city government aren't simply uninterested in justice. You oppose it. You don't simply failed to serve our interests, you have positioned yourselves against them. These aren't the actions of confused bystanders, right? Y'all are politicians. These are the behaviors of conspiring enemies. I believe that when someone tells you that they are your enemy, then you better believe them. And I believe you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Billy Belcher.
Hey, I'm Billy Belcher. I'm with the Working Class and Households Organizing Alliance. It has been nearly 3 years since our police hogtied and killed Marcus Smith. His killers still walk unpunished, and his family still hasn't been compensated. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the wrong thing. You let the city attorney insult people while he wants everyone else like me barred from speaking. You have run as far from accountability and justice as you can. You may eventually settle with the Smith family, but that will not be justice, not while people still have no accountability with their police. When people make it clear that a violent and racist gang is brutalizing us, you're supposed to stop it, not feed it. You're elected by people like me, and then you're supposed to appoint and supervise people like the police chief. You're supposed to control the police department for us. You do not. You merely feed the machine. You're like workers who are chained to an assembly line when you're supposed to be in control of the process. This council replied to the largest anti-police protests in anyone's memory with increased funding and staffing. Yes, violent crime is up in this age of the pandemic. That should be surprising to no one. But if you want to stop crime, police ain't your bet. They respond to things that have already happened. It has been proven time and again for literally decades that lowering crime is not something that law enforcement does. Last summer, our law enforcement used tear gas, though, against peaceful protesters. And then they lied about it. Nobody was punished. We saw zero accountability, but you're going to give them more stuff. When your police review board recommended a written consent policy to protect against abuse, you refused. When the Greensboro Police Officers Association wrote to the state medical examiner asking for a different verdict in the Marcus Smith homicide, was someone reprimanded for that deed? Is there accountability over the machine that you're feeding? Look at the video of Marcus Smith being tied up and killed like an animal and tell me what we're getting more of. Tell me who's going to hold it accountable. Look at the video of Zared Jones being brutalized and tell me what we're getting more of and who is going to hold it accountable. We know it ain't you. You're too cowardly to even look at the video. Zared Jones and Marcus Smith deserve better than you, and so do we all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next few speakers are by Zoom. The first one is Hester Petty.
Good evening. My name is Hester Petty. Live at 3402 Canterbury Street here in Greensboro. I kind of wondered why your lawyers spent so much time trying to suppress the 50 police body-worn videos that the judge ordered the city to produce. And now I know why. There was something terribly wrong going on in the GPD with poorly trained officers applying the maximum restraint in excessive numbers without regard to the health and safety of their detainees. The brief filed today by the Smith's legal team contains details about what they've seen on those 50 videos. Details such as this: a Black woman hogtied by one of the defendants with her legs at less than 90 degrees from her body, left prone on the ground for more than 5 minutes with her breasts exposed, yelling and screaming in pain, outrage, and humiliation. And this: an elderly woman suffering from dementia is rip hobbled while she repeatedly complains that it is hurting her arms. She's crying on the ground, face down, with her dress up throughout the rip hobbling. These are just two of the many examples in the 50 videos of victims being hogtied by Greensboro police officers. Apparently, this information was kept secret from City Council because in a deposition, when a City Council member was asked whether Trey Davis gave them any details about the hog ties in the body-worn cameras that the city was supposed to turn over to the Smith legal team, they replied, "I don't know that he was telling me he had analyzed them, other than to say there was documentation of how many times it had been used and that there were no injuries reported. That was the entirety of the information I received." Really? No mention of people screaming or crying out in pain or telling the police that they couldn't breathe. No mention of people hogtied and left face down on the ground or face down on the back seat of a police car. No mention that of the 50 videos released to the Smith legal team, 76% of the hogtied victims were Black. And since the legal team knows of at least 275 incidents of hog tying, this abuse likely went on for years, not just the few years covered by the court order.
30 seconds.
And you don't want an independent investigation into the Greensboro Police Department? Well, I do. And by the way, the next time you get together to talk about it, don't do it behind closed doors. Conduct city business out in the open. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lewis Pitts.
Thank you. My name is Lewis Pitts. I too want to express my outrage at your lack of leadership and our racist, brutal, violent police department that is now clearly exposed from this minimum release that was forced of the 50 body-worn cameras. To continue with what Ms. Petty brought out, I want to urge you to read that motion and the affidavit that was filed last night. In one of the videotapes of these 50, one of the officers says during the training that the officer says just about every time he had to use a rip hobble, he had to go back and get a new one because it's covered in blood. And yet your city attorney, Chuck Watts, is quoted in the paper saying there were no serious injuries. There's people that are crying and pleading in pain that they can't breathe. There's a Black female victim with a knee on her neck for more than 2 minutes, just like George Floyd. There are many more examples. These were just the previous 8.5 months prior to the killing of Marcus Smith, which was ruled a homicide. As Ms. Petty said, over 3/4 of the uses of this violent technique were on people of color, 48%, so nearly half, on women. And what have you done? Scurry into secret session, not having the courage to state your positions on the record as to what you believe about any of this and what you're willing to find out. This horror, this demonic racist violence in such a pattern that in the previous 4 years, it was nearly 300 instances of it, has to be stopped. We urge you to convene an independent investigation and to stop hiding the documents, the secret session where you went into to talk about and decide no independent investigation. Our lawyer, Amanda Martin, for the Greensboro Justice Coalition, has yet to receive a response requesting the public records that exist relating to that. We will assure you that we will keep pounding to make sure that our city and our nation learn about every one of these gory, horrible, racist acts of violence by our police department, now managed by an African-American chief of police and with a deputy assistant manager who's African-American and with an African-American city attorney.
Thank you.
They aren't doing anything to assist resolve the problem. It's up to you.
Your time is up. Our next speaker is Carrie Ann Broadway.
Hello, my name is Carrie Ann Broadway. I signed up to speak tonight about the Marcus Dion Smith case. As the city of Greensboro nears its 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives actually matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus' death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was his treatment by police employed by this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the hog tying of it for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 1990s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary used over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death, when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximally restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family federal lawsuit and suppress the body police camera videos prior to uses of maximum restraint? The maximum restraint has long been recognized by the United States Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to end custody deaths. It is appalling that it has been so often in Greensboro that most of the victims were Black, and it's appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold Greensboro Police Department accountable for supporting the settlement. This will not bring Marcus back and is a far cry from true justice, but is a step towards police accountability. Mediation with the Smith family has resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows Black Lives Matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is also by Zoom, Pam Nago Crossan.
Hey, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I want to speak also about the Marcus Smith case and piggyback on what some other folks have said. There's an issue of patterns here, patterns of racism, patterns of abuse, patterns of misconduct, patterns of the city evading, denying, protecting the police, and none of that is new. Another pattern that I want to speak about, though, is the pattern of people who are experiencing a mental health crisis, ending up experiencing violence at the hands of the police, not just in Greensboro, but all over the country. I wanted to call the name of Daryl Howerton, who was killed in 1994 by GPD. Neighbors were worried about this kid. He was 18 years old. He was naked in the street, behaving erratically. His neighbors knew that he was in trouble. They called the police, and in less than 2 minutes, he was shot dead by the rookie cop that showed up on the scene. Daryl supposedly had a small steak knife in his hand, so this officer felt threatened for his life. Gil Barber, killed by Guilford County Sheriff's deputy, was called to the scene by neighbors. Gil had crashed his own car in the middle of the night in High Point. was visibly injured, naked, bleeding from his head. But the officer that showed up on the scene, he was by himself. It was late at night. He felt threatened for his life. So he shot and killed Gil. Marcus approached the police himself, asking for help. This was not a rookie officer. There were multiple officers there, experienced officers. That, you know, they were not, what am I trying to say? It wasn't the middle of the night. They weren't alone. So, you know, completely different situation. It wasn't a quick, potentially regrettable decision. You know, oh, this guy's threatening me, I'm gonna, you know, pull my firearm. No, this was, we're all gonna work together and put this guy on the
30
ground
seconds.
and restrain him in a way that is known to be life-threatening. There's medical personnel there watching, which deeply, deeply concerns me because I'm a nurse. And I know what it means to put someone in restraints because they're a threat to you or a threat to themselves. It requires a doctor order. It has to be done in a very particular way because it's known to be a medical threat.
Time has expired.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person, Molly Blaffer.
Hello, my name is Molly Blafer, and I'm from Greensboro Revolutionary Socialists. I signed up to speak tonight about Marcus Smith Dion's case. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of this tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives even matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus' death as a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was treatment by the police of this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known this since the 1990s, that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death, when so many other police departments have banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those Black people, and 17% of them people experiencing mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body cameras videos prior to use of maximum restraint? The maximum restraint has been long recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many police departments and contributors of it as a contributor to in-custody death. It's appalling that this is used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims are Black. And it's appalling that we're trying to get accountability and you block us with lawyers. We demand that City Council hold GPD accountable by supporting this settlement. It will not bring Marcus back, and it is a far, far, far cry from justice, but it's a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows Black Lives Matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is by Zoom, Rob Gaines.
Hello, my name is Robert Gaines, and I am from the Greensboro Revolutionary Socialists. I signed up to speak tonight to talk about the Marcus Dion Smith case. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives actually matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus's death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was his treatment by the police employed by this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 90s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximally restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body camera videos of prior uses of the maximum restraint? The maximum restraint has long been recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to in-custody deaths. It is appalling that it has been used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims were Black. And it's appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold the Greensboro Police Department accountable by supporting this settlement. This will not bring Marcus back, and it is a far cry from true justice, but it is a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has finally resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows that Black lives matter in the city of Greensboro? And that's it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person, and it is Joel Strauntz.
Hello, my name is Joel Strauntz, and I'm from the Greensboro Revolutionary Socialists. I signed up to speak tonight to talk about the Marcus Dion Smith case. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I also implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives actually matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus's death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was his treatment by the police employed by this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 1990s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximally restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body camera videos of prior uses of maximum restraint? Maximum restraint has long been recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to in-custody deaths. It is appalling that it has been used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims were Black. And it's appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold the GPD accountable by supporting this settlement. This will not bring Marcus back. And it is a far cry from true justice, but it is a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has finally resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows that Black lives matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anderson Bean, and that is by Zoom.
Can you hear me? Yep.
Is Mr. Bean on the call?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Anderson Bean, and I'm from the Greensboro Revolutionary Socialist. I signed up to speak tonight to talk about Marcus Dion Smith. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black Lives Matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus's death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was the treatment by the police employed by this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 1990s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death, when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximum restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body camera videos of prior uses of maximum restraint? Maximum restraint has long been recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to in-custody deaths. It's appalling that it has been used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims were Black. And it's appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold GDP accountable by supporting a fair settlement. This will not bring Marcus back, and it's a far cry from justice, but it is a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has finally resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows that Black Lives Matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia DeBeer, and she is in person.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Almost 3 years ago, Marcus Smith was hogtied by the police, and the coroner's office declared Marcus's death was a homicide. I'm a person who lost my beloved grown son. Fortunately, it wasn't a violent death. But even so, I know what profound injury it is to everyone in the family. And I grieve for the Smith family. After this deep loss, the Smiths experienced and are experiencing, the city added to the injury by releasing incorrect information about Marcus. This insult was followed by the city's refusal to give the family access to the video. Then private lawyers were hired by the city, and more insult was added to the profound injury inflicted on this family. The city is now likely to have spent upwards of $1 million of taxpayer money, and there is no resolution for this family or this city. As members of City Council, you have the power to direct the lawyers to resolve this matter. It is time to show remorse for what has been done to this family. It is time to bring this tragic story to a close and give the family the respect and compensation it deserves. It is time for Greensboro to step up and be the city that takes responsibility for its mistakes and opens up ground for true healing to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katherine Holcomb, and she is in person.
I'm Katherine Holcomb. I reside at 1911 Rosecrest Drive, 27408. I've lived in Greensboro all but 2 of my years, and I thought my hometown was wonderful until I grew up and learned from the City Human Relations Commission and the Commission on the Status of Women of what the whole city was like. My privilege had kept me from knowing all the areas of Greensboro where people lived with different colors and religions than mine. Everyone was not free and safe. Everyone was not able to pay a lawyer to get their tickets erased, as my family was. Now I see how differently we live, wealthy and poor, safe and unsafe, respected and disrespected in this very town. I know now that how one of us lives affects us all. It affects the health of our entire community, how fearful we feel, how generous we feel when treatment is disrespectful of most people. Now I'm imagining a reformed Greensboro. We are a famous model in the North Carolina or in the United States. I imagine a Greensboro where everyone gets respect and safety no matter what area of town they live in. I imagine a Greensboro where government jobs are quick to admit wrongs, to apologize immediately, and change rules to prevent more disservice. I imagine a Greensboro where no one fears people of other races or people who live in affordable housing nearby. A Greensboro where no neighborhood tolerates litter and cares for the parks and streams, where we welcome all religions and cultures in our midst, ready to learn from them, where loving our neighbor means wanting others to have what I have: respect, education, health, and care, and where truth and transparency rule all. When we see police on camera harming a homeless man, treating him in a disrespectful way compared to the way I am treated by police, and our chief of police and city officials quick to name or quick to not apologize for it and say, we don't see anything wrong. Imagine a new Greensboro. It's easy if you try. No qualified immunity, no homeless homicide. Imagine all the people sharing life in peace here. Imagine no mothers losing sons, no child without a home, no cover-ups to protect jobs, no suits to deny what's due. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Can you imagine a reformed Greensboro with me?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Demetrius Noble by Zoom.
Hello, my name is Demetrius Noble, and I'm from Greensboro Revolutionary Socialists. I signed up to speak tonight to talk about the Marcus Dion Smith case. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives actually matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus's death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was his treatment by the police employed by this city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 90s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximally restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body camera videos of prior uses of the maximum restraint? The maximum restraint has long been recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to in-custody deaths. It is appalling that this has been used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims were Black. And it's appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold GPD accountable by supporting the settlement. This will not bring Marcus back, and it is a far cry for true justice, but it is a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has finally resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows that Black lives matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person. Can I bind him?
Power to the people. We had a moment of silence earlier, and I think it's only right to have a moment of silence for Marcus Dion Smith. Thank you. I'm here today to talk about what needs to be talked about, speak truth to power. We had something written up that I wanted to share with you all, but as I realized that once you guys hear it, you kind of tune out. So I'm going to be here speaking from the heart for the next 2 minutes. When I think about how long I've been in Greensboro and the patterns that I've seen since I've been here as a student at A&T and then graduating and being a resident, I realized that we're not solving the problem. We're putting Band-Aids on it. We're perpetuating the problem. Some people are silent towards it. Some people are saying it's wrong, but there's not any real action being done about the problem. Now, I want to think about why that is. Why aren't we solving the issues that are killing people, that are hurting people? I'm not here today representing any organization or any group. I'm here representing the future generations. Because enough is enough. We need people to start speaking out because silence furthers oppression. We cannot continue to allow people to perpetuate oppression. We have to think about what are our personal advantages that we have. What space are we in? Are we learning? Are we bettering? Because if we're not, then we're perpetuating the oppression. There's no left or right, right? There's this right or wrong. If you don't choose, it chooses for you. If you say it doesn't associate you, you have no problem with it, then you're perpetuating it. I really want folks to realize how serious this is because we will get justice for Marcus Dion Smith, but we need so much more. We need institutional justice. We need to transform this system, and it can happen here in Greensboro. I believe in it, and that's why I'm here. That's why I showed up tonight. I'm here with revolutionary love. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe our final speaker, Evelyn Smith, and she is here in the chambers.
Good evening. My name is Evelyn Smith. I live at 1316 Spry Street in Greensboro. I'm speaking today to add my voice to the many voices that you've heard tonight and over the last almost 3 years across our city who want to add the case of Marcus Smith to the work that must be done by you because this case needs to be settled now. I am glad that the city is in mediation, and I strongly believe that the city's offer should reflect the value of Marcus Smith's life and all Black lives. I care about this case because this unfinished business of the city sends a terrible message to our community that the police are not held accountable when they use unreasonable force, even when it's deadly. And it also sends the message that efforts to seek remedies will be vigorously fought using huge sums of taxpayer dollars to delay and diminish a just settlement. This has gone on far too long. It's time for City Council to exert your leadership to settle this case and show that you care about real justice for all members of our community. As Ella Baker famously said, until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons is as important as the killing of a white mother's son, then we who believe in freedom cannot rest. I urge you to settle the case now and offer a sincere apology. It's the least that we can do.
Thank you. And I believe that is the final speaker, unless I've missed someone. Do you wish to speak, or you're supposed to sign up by 6, but come on and speak. If you would give us your name. You'll have to wait till you get to the podium.
Hi, I'm Sabina Nogo. I think I signed up for Zoom, but then showed up in person instead. But I am here from the Greensboro Revolutionary Socialists, and this may sound familiar, but repetition is important. As the city of Greensboro nears the 3rd anniversary of the tragic and unnecessary killing of Marcus Smith, I implore each of you to consider whether or not Black lives actually matter here in Greensboro. Multiple medical examiners ruled Marcus's death a homicide. In other words, the primary cause of Marcus's death was his treatment by the police employed by the city. Why did you wait until after the killing of Marcus Smith to ban the use of hog tying for the Greensboro Police Department? We've known since the 1990s that hog tying is life-threatening. Why was the maximum restraint necessary over 275 times in the 4 years before Marcus's death when so many other police departments had banned the procedure? And why were 68% of those maximally restrained Black and 17% experiencing some type of mental health crisis? Why did you spend over $1 million trying to dismiss the Smith family's federal lawsuit and suppress the police body camera videos of prior use of the maximum restraint? The maximum restraint has long been recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice and many local police departments as a contributor to in-custody deaths. It is appalling that it has been used so often in Greensboro and that most of the victims were Black. And it is appalling that when we try to get accountability, you block us with lawyers. We demand that the City Council hold the Greensboro Police Department accountable by supporting this settlement. This will not bring Marcus back, and it is a far cry from true justice, but it is a step towards police accountability. Mediation in the Smith family lawsuit has finally resumed. You have a decision to make. What side of history do you choose? Will you choose the side that lies and covers up and buries social change? Or will you settle with the Smith family for an amount that shows that Black lives matter in the city of Greensboro? Thank you.
Thank you. And I do believe that is our final speaker. So at this point, we will move on to our consent agenda. We have 2 items. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
As a matter of fact, let's. Okay. All right. So that is a roll call vote, correct? That was moved by Dr. Wells, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. I am a yes. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We do not have any public hearing items today. We have two general business items. Item 1.1 is a resolution to amend the Code of Ethics for the Mayor and City Council adopted May 18th, 2021 at the Greensboro City Council meeting.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower and seconded by Mrs. Abuzawader. We also have to do a roll call vote while we're hybrid. I am a yes. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. Item number I.2 is a resolution to approve the memorandum of agreement between the state of North Carolina and local governments on proceeds relating to the settlement of opioid litigation.
Move the item.
That has been moved and seconded. Again, we have to do both. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
Thank you. And that passes 8-0. We will now move on to any board appointments or data bank. Mrs. Hoffman? Ms. Kennedy?
None tonight.
Dr. Wells?
No.
I would like to appoint, on behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Yvonne Johnson, Andrew Egbert to the Zoning Commission. He is in District 5, and we spoke with Mrs. Thurm about that. That would fill one of the two appointments that we have.
Second.
I have a second by Mrs. Thurm. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
I do have an issue, but that's fine.
We had, we still have one opening.
Yeah, and that belongs to District 1, and we need a Black female, so that's why I'm
And the
waiting.
openings were in 1, 3, and 5, and this
Mhm.
fills 5.
Right.
Or I should say, you could choose from 1, 3, or 5,
Yeah.
because 2 and 4
That's what I'm
already
like-
had 2
Yeah,
placements.
it's just a concern that we keep the composition, you know,
Well,
really
yes.
fair and equal. Mhm.
So that passes 8-0. Any boards and commissions, Mrs. Abuzawader?
No.
Mr. Outling?
None this evening. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurm?
Not tonight.
And Mrs. Hightower?
No.
Okay, council comments, Mrs. Hightower?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to ask the city attorney, is it possible that I see those videos as well that have been referenced all night?
We'd have to go through the process of petitioning the court and having it done, but yes.
I would second Mrs.
You know.
Hightower's request.
Thank you.
You know, in the case of the discovery required by the magistrate, he essentially overruled the state requirements. And so we complied with that, but we can't not comply with the state rules when we do it.
Well, so you kind of faded down on me a little bit, so.
I'm just saying we have to go through the process that the statute requires. We didn't do that for purposes of litigation because the court ordered it.
But for our purposes, we can do it through that. So
We can go through the standard process, yes.
And that would be a total, I think, of 227 videos because it was 50 incidents, but there were multiple videos at some of those. So
It's
I
many
think
hours.
the city disclosed 227 videos.
But I think it's just too important not to. And I feel it's necessary.
And do you have to do a separate action on every video, or can you do a blanket?
I mean, you can't do a blanket, but you may be able to do it in a single proceeding. I have to make sure that,
Okay.
I believe that you can do it in a single proceeding, just multiple incidents.
Yeah, so it's actually 50 cases, just.
50
220.
incidents.
Right, 50 incidents, so it would only be 50.
But you may have a single incident that has several different
Right, correct.
body worn cameras and then, right. So that's why it ends up being quite lengthy to watch.
That's fine.
And that would be allowing us to watch them.
Yes.
That is what I would like to do.
Any
So-
council comments on that?
I will, oh, council, oh, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So there was, I don't know if we actually need to take a vote on that or,
I mean, I get the sense of council, it could be done. It's, if you want to vote, it's fine.
okay. If you would see if those are available for us to view.
Right.
And I do think that the legislature in speaking to some of our legislators understand how difficult this whole process is on everyone. And the fact that we might have to go out for, a single request on every video. And I do believe that our delegation wants to move this forward to make it easier. It was, there was a vote in the legislature a couple weeks ago, which took the body worn camera videos out of the legislation. There's possibility that it could be put back in again. I know that our police department, GPOA, and the Police Chiefs Association all believe that body worn camera videos should be easier to view. I think this is more of an urban-rural divide than anything else. So we'll continue to work with our Guilford delegation, who has really tried to move this forward.
Was that on our last legislative agenda to them?
It is. It's been on our
'Cause I
legislative
know
agenda
we've done it.
for,
I don't remember it this year, but
Yeah.
I know it had been in times past.
Yes.
But I knew you had talked to Representative
I'm sorry, I
Fairclough.
can't understand what you're saying.
Well,
No,
it's the mask.
it's the mask.
Okay, thank you. No, I said, I didn't know if it was on the last
It is. It's been
legislative
on for the
agenda,
last few years.
but I know you have been speaking with Representative Fairclough.
Yes, and Representative Faircloth fully understands what the issue is. And actually, he tried to put a different bill through than the one that got passed. And I know that this is cast a lot of time as the Faircloth bill, but in fact, there were other representatives who changed his bill. This was not the way he originally wrote it. There were other representatives who changed his original bill. So we'll continue to work with him and the rest of our legislators to make it easier for us to view body worn camera.
Yeah, I agree. We have to do it, and if nothing else, but for transparency.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think, Mr. Outling, did you want to make a comment on that?
On this one. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So consistent with the ethics policy we just passed, which calls for there to be action where 5 council members support it. I went to state that I support Councilman Hightower's request. My understanding is that the city's position is that all of these incidences depicted in these additional videos not involving Mr. Smith are irrelevant and can't, as a legal matter, support the plaintiff's case. That being said, it's very clear from their filing last night that it's going to be an important consideration, perhaps in evaluating the case, including the degree to which settlement is advisable. And so in that connection, I do think it would be helpful for us to actually see the same information that's the subject of their filings, that will presumably be the subject of arguments they make in connection with mediation and settlement. So just wanted to state my support of Councilman Hightower's request.
I have a question too about it while we're still on it. And just for clarification, in this situation where we are actually a party to this case, do we still have to go through that process, or do we not have the ability to view what is being shown and discussed in a case that we are a party to? I don't understand why we would have to, and I'm looking at Justin or any attorney. But that's kind of my primary question. I understand going back, for typically going through that process, but we can look at anything that relates to this case. We are parties directly involved in it, can we not?
Not the video. I wouldn't support us violating state law, and that's what it would be. Under the court order, we had to produce it to the other side, and we did. Our position on not producing it was not about suppressing the information. It was about respect for state law. And we are a creature of state law.
Sure.
And therefore, I don't think we have the authority to do that. So the judge did not order us to provide it to you. It was ordered to be provided to the other side. So under the judge's order, we didn't comply with state law.
But is it typical when, and I'm asking this for
It's an unusual
clarification.
situation without
Yeah,
a
is
doubt.
it typical when you're involved in a legal matter that you don't have access to the materials you're supplying to the other side?
I believe that we can get access to it. I just think it's going to take the process. We have done this numerous times since I've been the city attorney. We can go through the process. We asked the court to allow us to go through the process. If you all want to see it, we'll go through the process.
No, and like I said, I understand that typically. I was just curious as to, and you know.
I mean, I hear your argument, and I do think it's a fair argument. But I think at the end of the day, it's a question of, oh, now there's another reason we're going to violate state law.
Well, no, I understand. I totally
Because
understand
disclosing
that.
it to you all would be not following the state law procedure.
No, I understand that. What I'm asking is, don't we have the ability to look at anything that's received by our attorney as it relates to a lawsuit that we're part of?
I think what I heard him say is not video.
There's not- Exactly. There's not
It
a
doesn't
state.
make any sense to me
Yeah,
either.
I think,
Well, there's not a state law that restricts your access to any other documents or material that we have produced. So your general statement would be true. When it comes to body worn camera, there's a specific statute, and we would like to all see it changed. And you know, I'm part of that effort,
But if it's been overridden in this case,
it hasn't been overridden, but the authority of the power of the court is what we complied with, rather than get sanctioned for failing to comply with it.
And I don't want to
I
be
guess I just,
sanctioned.
and I'll stop.
Yeah, let's not talk
talking.
over
Yeah,
each
but
other.
I guess what's
Yeah.
troubling me is that for any legal action that we're a part of, any notion that we can't see anything that has to do with that legal action just makes no sense to me.
and now,
I will agree with you on that point.
for context, I'll add, the same exact issue came up when the law itself was passed. There was discussion and a question about whether or not, as council members, essentially, we are the city in a sense, at least a majority, and thus would we even have to petition the court to ask for it as opposed to simply, it's city property, we can review it. Consistent with the advice Mr. Watts is giving, the then city attorney said his best interpretation of the law was that even though we are the city in a certain sense, we still have to request permission of the court for us to view it.
And I
But
think
from that
that's-
discussion, it was always my understanding that that was his interpretation of the law. It wasn't a clear prohibition in the law.
Well, it is practice across the state.
That was what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's,
Every other city, they treat it the same way.
and I would add, that's why it was such a pitched discussion with the city attorney at the time, because oftentimes what the first municipality does sets the precedent for other municipalities, which happened in this particular case. But on the logic, Michelle, I agree with you 100%.
No, I agree with you on the logic as well.
Lots of questions about what do you mean you can't, but so we need to talk about it, we need to make clear if there's something that keeps us from being able. Sorry, if there's something that keeps us from being able to move forward with just saying, we want to view this, let's view it, it needs to be rock solid that we're having to follow some provision of state law.
It is rock solid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I would much rather err on the side of caution than to get down the road and realize that we've caused a hiccup and then we're problematic. So,
I mean, I really was torn on the whole situation with the federal court. It was a choice of basically complying with a federal order. You don't comply with it, you know, I could find myself in a difficult position. The city could get sanctioned. But we are constituted by state law. We cannot violate state law.
Right.
I think
And
it'd
I
be a
don't want to do
violation.
anything, Mr. City Attorney, that puts us in a position that somebody else creates another bill that stops us totally again.
So I think we know if you would move forward with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Please. Jaren, did you have anything else?
Yes, I did. Where was I?
Body worn camera.
Well, we're good on body worn camera for now.
Yes.
I think we got that one good. And I did hear another statement, but maybe I need to ask the city attorney first. Now, to Michelle's point about being able to see whatever's in the case, any kind of correspondence that came out of that case that went to Raleigh by some other organization, was that part of the case?
I don't think that's part of the case. I don't know what you're really talking about, to tell you the truth.
Well, it was just something about the police association mailed some kind of letter. I've never heard that
We're not in
before,
litigation with them.
so I'm not aware
She
of
was,
that.
she was referring to something early on in the Marcus Smith case that that Amiel wrote.
Oh,
That was,
way back.
Yeah.
And at some point, can we get an update on the whole case?
So in this case, we have a protective order that has various levels of confidentiality. The body worn camera was shared with the other side under the highest level of restriction, which has a lot of rules to it.
Okay.
None of which, really are open to us at this point.
Okay.
But there are other documents that have been produced that I would have to look at the rules, but we seek to comply with the rules. Some of the comments suggested or appeared to suggest that maybe other people have actually seen those videos, in which case that would be a violation.
I don't want to violate, so
Or it
I'm
suggests
following.
that someone who has seen the videos, maybe by authorization, has discussed those with other people. That would also be a violation.
anything else, Mrs. Hightower?
Yeah, I want to mention congratulations to, we had a adult day center that opened in District 1 this past Saturday. Journey, one of the owners is Fanta Dorley. Many of you may know her. She works a lot with, our organizations here in the city. And it's something I think is very unique. I don't know if there's another one here in the city somewhere, and it may be, but it's at 2203 South Elm Eugene Street. And I think one day we may all be there and may need an adult day center to go to. I wish her much, hey, you never know. You got to be prepared. I wish her much success. District 1, brand new business. It's right there on South Elm Eugene. And I'm looking forward to all they're going to offer. And then Saturday I also went by Brown Recreation and hung out with our junior Aggies football team. They had a nice event at Brown Recreation Center, and food and popcorn and just general fun, just to relax, and the parents and everything, because football season's gearing up, I guess. I guess they'll be going out and doing their youthful thing, and it was hot, but it was very nice. So a lot of things, and we have some, and I want to thank the city media department, Carla and Jake, for creating a page to broadcast all of our upcoming back to school events, with dates and times. So we'll know we're going to be a busy time back to school, and our kids are going to be prepared because there's so many events happening. And you can just go to our city page and look them up and attend every one of them. And I thought that was something good. So I appreciate them doing that. So then I guess we'll see you all tomorrow night. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Wells?
Well, I'd like to thank Carla and her team for the article in Our State magazine, because they're putting us on the map showing things that are happening in East Greensboro. I'm looking forward to National Night Out tomorrow night. And I'd like to invite all of the citizens who are up in Northeast Greensboro to the Concerned Citizens of Northeast Greensboro's monthly meeting on Thursday night at 7. It's going to be on Zoom. And you can find the link on my page, Goldie Wells for City Council. And this week when I guess it was last week when we listened to the report from our chief of police, and they've been talking about it on all the media ever since. They've been just highlighting and saying about the crime. And just since we've been sitting here, there's 2 men were shot over there in High Point because they got upset because the line was too long getting some beer or something. So, I mean, it's just all kinds of things that are happening. But I think the chief gave us a list of things that he thought really we need to attack. The police department cannot do it all. And I expressed my thoughts about that. And I wish that we would seriously take that list and start working it to see what we can do to do something about the list. So I don't know who I'm supposed to ask, except ask all of you who are sitting here to be concerned about the list and then see what we can do about making some changes. And I know that these things have gone on for years and years, but I was really moved when I looked at that crescent the other day. We've been seeing that crescent for so long, but I thought about it. I'm supposed to represent the people in that area. What am I doing to make it better? And so I need your support, and that's doing something to make things better in that area. 1, 2, and a little bit of 5, but 1 and 2 are heavily impacted by the crime. So I'm asking for your support and look at that list. I guess it's city manager. I guess that's what it's saying. Thank you.
Mr. Outling?
Thank you. As I'm sure everyone on council want to express my condolences to the Johnson family on the passing of Walter Johnson. You know, oftentimes it's very easy to identify people as trailblazers when they've done amazing things with their lives and careers. But Walter, in fact, was a trailblazer generally, and for me specifically. Walter was the first graduate who was Black of Duke University School of Law, the law school at which I attended school. And so it's really, in a literal sense, someone who's opened up doors for me in my professional career. And so definitely want to express condolences to the Johnson family. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman?
Just a reminder that we will be celebrating and acknowledging the 10th anniversary of the Aquatic Center this week. And I believe, Mayor, you were the only one of us here who was on that council then, and it was a 5-4.
Yep, I was the
vote.
tiebreaker.
And, you know, I just thank you. And I thank you for your 4 associates who had the vision and the strength and the determination to make that happen. And what a benefit and what a difference it has made to the city of Greensboro. So just a reminder that, you know, sometimes the things that we have to make decisions about are not easy. And that was a really important one. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Thurm?
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to seeing folks at National Night Out tomorrow night. I think I counted there are 18 neighborhoods in my district, and there is no way I can get by all 18 of them in 2 hours. So I just want to let folks know that I'm going to do my best to get as many as possible. But I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow night. I also want to remind council that a couple weeks ago, you all got cards from participatory budgeting group to be passed out to encourage people to get involved in the process, and remind you all to take those with you, please, tomorrow night as you go from neighborhood to neighborhood and help get those passed out to the community. So that's it. Thank you.
Mrs. Abuzawader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that most of council, maybe all, and staff were at Mr. Johnson's funeral yesterday, and it was a beautiful service. It was truly a beautiful, heart-warming, emotional service that you certainly, even when you left, you realized what a wonderful man Walt was, and so many people in this community admired him. So, of course, continuing condolences and prayers for the family. It's going to be tough for them, but they'll get through. They'll get through. They're strong. And my only other comment was, yes, National Night Out tomorrow evening. Yeah, I looked, I could have 110 places to go just about. But it is hard to get to everyone because so many people say, please come to mine, please come to mine. And you try to get a list going. And when you go one place, it's hard to leave. So, please bear with us as we try to get as far across the city as all of us can. So, and that is one of the things, the chief mentioned when he did the work session on that, it's building relationships with the community. So I hope more and more of the community will participate and come out tomorrow evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Just really quickly, a plug for our community to get vaccinated as we're watching our COVID numbers increase in troubling ways. And we know that the safest thing we can do for ourselves and our neighbors is to move through a vaccination process. So really just want to plug that. I think our transmission
Average right now, the 14-day average is 5.5. Yesterday's average was 7.8.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
And we don't want to find ourselves back in the position we've been in before. So many kids ready to go back to school after having a really difficult year last year. And I think it's the most important thing you can do for the health of our community today. So if you haven't been vaccinated, there are lots of opportunities for that to be possible for you. And try to get us all as safe as we can be so we can get back to normal life.
Thank you. I too would like to express my condolence to Yvonne and her family. It really was a very special service. I know I left wanting to be a better grandparent because you could just see the absolute love and adoration with his children and his grandchildren. And the legacy that he left to Greensboro and to Duke is great, but the legacy he left on his family is even greater. And that will trickle for generations to come. We have the Wyndham Championship coming up shortly. It's one of the biggest events we'll have in a while. The PGA so far is allowing spectators. I know they're looking for volunteers. So if you want to get out there and see a little bit of golf, I suggest you go on the Wyndham Championship website. They do need volunteers in lots of different areas. I'll be volunteering this year. It's usually a whole lot of fun. So I hope to see you out there, whether you're volunteering or you're watching, but let's do it safely. I want to also talk about the vaccines that Michelle mentioned. As a county, 48% of our county has had both shots, are fully vaccinated. A few more percentages have had the one shot. So I hope that means they're waiting in the wings to get their second shot, but that would still only bring us up to 52%. And that is a far cry from what the herd immunity number was that we've heard for almost a year. We do want to make sure that our children go back to school and go back safely. We certainly saw the education gap and the broadband gap and the food insecurity and everything else amplified this last year. So I hope that, people will, start wearing a mask again. I hate it. I had them all put away, had to take them out again. I just wish that we would look at this kind of as a neighbor to neighbor thing, like when Reverend Ficaro was here, when you talk about taking care of your neighbors, that, we don't make it a political stance, but that we want to do what we can to lower that transmission rate, because the people who are in the hospital and who are getting sick now are getting younger and younger. For a long time, people thought, well, you got to be old or you got to have underlying conditions. But these variants are really strong. So I just hope that we would all think about ourselves, our loved ones, and our neighbors as we move about the next couple of weeks. And National Night Out, I know that I'll be riding with the chief tomorrow. We're going to try to get to as many neighborhoods as we can, but 110, that's a lot. And we are a big city. We got a lot of ground to cover. So, we hope that we'll get to as many neighborhoods as we can. But I'm glad that people are getting together, because one of the things that the chief said is to make sure that you've got strong neighborhoods, strong communication. And this is really the way to do it, is people get out and they get to know their neighborhoods and they look out for each other. And, whether they have a neighborhood newsletter or they do a community watch program, we're not going to police our way out of this. This has to be a multiple prong, and certainly getting to know your neighbors and having an actual neighborhood really makes a difference. So I look forward to seeing as many people as we can tomorrow. Mr. City Manager?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. City Attorney?
I have nothing either.
Thank
So,
you.
Madam Mayor, I have one other quick thing. Are we going to have a public hearing for the ARP money?
We are, we had one and nobody showed up. So we'll definitely have to have another one. And that is what we are talking to the city manager about. And, we've all gotten requests. I know some major, really heavy duty requests from local nonprofits and businesses. So we want to be responsive to that. But I believe that we will have another work session regarding ARP, especially now that we are a little bit more comfortable what the guidelines are. So if we could get that on the agenda and then follow it up with a public hearing, and we do have on the website, information about ARP. And we are trying to coordinate with the county, which again is a really nice change. It's kind of that one Guilford. So we'll do that. Do I have a motion
Move we
to
adjourn.
adjourn? Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Thurm. All in favor, say aye. Or you can just leave. Either one.